And so it seems, the cycle repeats itself. As we've made our way back from the rejection and the addiction, we find ourselves at the beginning, the creation, the beginning of Ethel Cain. While the internet is not shy when talking about Ethel Cain or Hayden Anadonia, it seems that there is a section of her music that often gets looked over. Her extended plays, or EPs. A majority of the time Ethel Cain's music is discussed, the attention is focused on her bigger concept albums, which is not necessarily a bad thing. They're amazing and should get the attention that they do. However, the EPs house a lot of really interesting things that people may miss by not giving them enough attention. A lot of really interesting choices sonically in the narrative choices. Aspects of their storytelling, their cohesion, and the introduction of themes that will get used later on in her works. The EPs, Carpetbed, Golden Age, and Inbred are extremely important, and that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. Released over the course of about 3 years, each one of these EPs mark a specific milestone in Ethel's career that is tangible through the music. So in an attempt to move the spotlight backwards in time just a little bit, we'll be discussing the stories of each 3 of these projects, going song by song, lyric by lyric, and seeing exactly what the intention was behind each one, and ultimately uncovering the secret stories and themes where we can, and seeing how they built the artist we listen to today. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around, because this is going to be really interesting. But just a few things before we start. If you missed the initial disclaimer, this video is going to discuss themes and topics that are extremely heavy. If any of the things you're reading on screen make you uncomfortable, then it is totally okay to click off. It is absolutely okay. Secondly, if you haven't seen my Ethel Cain videos before, I have 2 really good ones that you should watch after you're done here. There won't be any super important story details or anything like that you'll need to go back and watch these videos before you watch this one for, but I am just really proud of these, and if you enjoyed this one, you should go watch those as well. And on that note, if you're not subscribed to the channel, you should do that too. It's free and it lets me know to keep making videos just like these. It's the best way to support me. But anyways, without further ado, come with me outside while I discuss some of the greatest storytelling EPs. Thank you so much for watching. In my process of getting ready to film this, I came across a fuzzy red, like orange and black ant, I think it was, and it scared me really bad. I'm sure it was actually like poisonous or something. I'm gonna flash what it is on screen once I find out. It's terrifying. Anyways, it's almost like comforting whenever I do these kind of videos now, just because I feel like we've done one Ethel Cain video for each like big milestone. I think whenever I made Willoughby, I had right around 1,000 subscribers. When I did Perverts, I was just over 2,000, and now I'm like, we have a lot of subscribers now. Thank you, by the way. And if I've learned anything from those videos, it's that I, for whatever reason, only film in extreme temperatures. This one in Willoughby, it's like 80 degrees, 90 degrees right now. Perverts was like 20, and the wind is my absolute enemy. So if you can't tell, I have a windscreen on my microphone right now. It took me like 6 months after buying this thing to actually get one of those, but hopefully makes it sound a lot better. Can't tell right now, but I'm sure it does. And it's also important to remember a few narrative things about these projects as well. If you're a big Ethel Cain fan, then I'm sure you know, but these projects are not canon to the greater Preacher's Daughter universe. They are contained within themselves. That's mainly because they came out before Preacher's Daughter, but all of these EPs kind of are just self-contained universes with their own stories that don't have, you know, any other significance than that. Similarly to that point, these EPs are not necessarily concept albums in the sense that there is a single story being pushed throughout the entire project with different characters and themes and stuff like that. A majority of the time, it is just one overhanging theme that applies to the entire project, where each song is a different story. It's not always the case, and I'll point it out when it's not, but for majority of these projects, that's what it is. Okay, I've yapped your ear off long enough. Let's get into it. Carpetbed is the first official release that Hayden Anadonia put out under the stage name Ethel Cain. She had made some music under a previous stage name called White Silas, but in terms of how important that is to the Ethel Cain universe, it's not. We're also going to be covering the streaming versions of these projects, not the physical ones. I know that's less content, it's not the deluxe ones, but I don't have the physical ones, so I can't listen to the song. I know I can probably find it on YouTube or SoundCloud and stuff like that, but it also would just like double the amount of songs that we'd have to cover. And while I would love to talk to you guys all day about these projects, it's not going to be daylight forever, and I think it's supposed to rain later, so let's just be happy with where we're at. This EP is also sonically pretty obviously Ethel's first release. It's much rougher and not as fine-tuned as her other works and projects, even the ones we're going to cover today. And it gives it this kind of intimate bedroom grunge feel almost. The first song on Carpetbed is called Growing Pains. It's very simple. It's mainly just a plucking acoustic guitar, but the song is very heavy subject matter-wise. I can't forget him or forgive what he did. It's been 6 weeks, and I'm already like this. It seems that Ethel has just gotten out of a relationship. You took me out, taught me how to skate, with blood on my knees. You told me I would be okay. You knew nothing's that easy, so you said yes when I asked you to stay. For the first time in a long time, I don't want you to go away. This line can be interpreted in two different ways, but there's one interpretation that will make a lot more sense when we finish talking about the project that I'll mention as well. The first interpretation is that Ethel's partner is trying his best, but Ethel's own problems are coming in between the relationship and making it much more difficult. Ethel is not shy from painting relationship dynamics where her character is the focal point of the problem because of generational trauma or just ways that she is wired personally. And so in a bit of a broader lens, it would make sense for that to be kind of the picture she's painting here, with her partner agreeing to stay, knowing it's not going to be easy, and even kind of thinking he might leave just because of how hard it is to be with her sometimes. Or on the flip side, you can kind of shift that dynamic a little bit. You can pin the problems on Ethel's partner, painting him as a very self-centered person, where at the sight of her own physical anguish and problems, he thinks more of himself when making those decisions, reluctantly agreeing to stay. And that flip side makes a little more sense when she says, I hate that I love you, but I'm just in the way. But you say, I won't be here forever, and I'll wait as long as it takes. A very interesting relationship dynamic to view from both angles, where Ethel is either getting in the way in terms of pushing her partner away, with him being supportive and saying he'll wait as long as it takes, or on the flip side, he views Ethel as a distraction or someone who's always getting in the way, where all she wants to do is appease him. And in my opinion, the whole third verse kind of supports the whole flip side view, with them only meeting at night, with her trying to do things that would make her look cooler that he's not noticing. She is kind of not realizing the fact that he is not meeting her in public or in daylight, and is making this a very secretive thing, while at the same time not treating her well and not acknowledging the things that she does. And that's kind of the end of the song. Like I said, there's two different lenses you can view it from, but there's going to be a lot more evidence in Carpetbed that supports the latter view that I showed in a very interesting way that I do want to save for the very end of this discussion. Dog Days, not the Diary of a Wimpy Kid one, the Ethel Cain one. No one's ever gonna love me, not like you do. I've tried so hard to quit you, like I promised my mama I would. It sounds like we might be talking about the same person from last time. When I said that these EPs were not necessarily a concept album type of deal, where there's a flowing story throughout, Carpetbed is not that way. Carpetbed does seem to have a loosely flowing story throughout the entire project about Ethel and her very negative and abusive partner. So let's continue to see how this relationship fosters. It doesn't. You walk a fine line between God and animal. You're just like a feral dog I worship in bedroom ceremonials. This man is very two-natured. He has essentially two different selves that he can put on. He has a very godly side that he kind of convinces the world that is his normal self, where he's, just kind of a normal guy. But he can take that costume off and become an animal, one that has no respect for his partner in their relationship, one that goes to the bounds of even mistreating her physically, but one that Ethel can't help but still worship. Also, I keep referring to Ethel, just as a reminder, this isn't the Ethel Cain you're seeing in Preacher's Daughter and Willoughby Tucker and stuff like that. It's still Ethel Cain, just not the Ethel Cain character. This is a very simple song. It can maybe be a little callback to Florence and the Machine's Dog Days Are Over, and it's more of just a build-up talking about how strange this man is. It's pretty short, and it's not super narrative heavy other than that. So we're just gonna move on. Misuse Oh. This one is a very folky sounding song. Sonically, I think this is probably my favorite from Carpetbed. I disappear when it gets cold, but you found a way to keep me here with a body to hold. Ethel is kind of talking about how she usually carries herself in relationships, where normally when things get cold or when she gets sad, she leaves or just isolates herself. But it seems like the person she's with has found a way to subvert that. And while usually that can be painted as a good thing, it doesn't really seem like that's the case here. You found a way to keep me here with a body to hold sounds kind of like the other person is just in it for the physical gratification side of it, finding a way to subvert her emotions for his own gratification. I think of you when I'm drunk in the road in front of your old house. I miss what you do to me when I was in need of you and blacked out. It seems that this relationship is over for some unspecified reason. And when she says she misses it, I think to an extent it's saying she misses the sort of security that it provided. But the line, what you do to me when I was in need of you and blacked out, it doesn't necessarily seem like she was being treated with any kind of respect when she was drunk. And that is kind of hammered home with the chorus where she says, I miss you so, Misuse Oh. The parallel between I Miss You So and the title of the song, Misuse Oh, seems to paint the picture that even though Ethel misses, I guess, either the good parts or the security of the relationship, she's being misused. Sneaking out while you're asleep because you're my biggest fear. This line in particular is pointing out something really interesting. In all three of these songs, there's at least one line that's going to tie it together to the next song in a way that when I first listened to this EP, I sat there and paused the last song and I was like, there's absolutely no way that this is what the album or the EP is about. So let's talk about it. The next song is called Antlers. Antlers are a very common form of visuals in the Ethel Cain universe. She uses them a lot in her promotional material and just a lot of her world building and aesthetic choices. It's very common in the rural South to hunt, especially hunting deer, and so hunters end up with a lot of antler. This song is extremely heavy in the subject material aspect, and for lack of writing it all back down in my notes and having to read the lyrics out loud, to give sort of a TLDR of what the song details, Ethel has seemingly killed her father. Ethel has an extremely abusive father, both in the physical and mental aspect, and unfortunately the sexual aspect. Her mother is either out of the picture or is turning a blind eye to all of this, which has caused the trauma to come to a boiling point where Ethel eventually kills her father. While this may seem like just another self-contained song with a very brutal story, when I mentioned that each song before this has a line that ties itself back into this, I meant it. I believe that this entire EP is about Ethel's relationship with her extremely abusive father. So let's tie everything together and recap why I think this. In Growing Pains, I mean, she's growing up, but she talks about when she got taken to the ice rink to learn how to skate. Who was a likely person that would take a young girl out to skate? Her father. He only meets with her in darkness. Dog Days talks about a two-natured man, a god, and an animal. What would be more two-natured than a father who's having to hide his abusive tendencies with his daughter? Misuse Oh, I think, takes place after Antlers, with her walking past their old house, and the comparison of I Miss You Oh and Misuse Oh is calling back to that two-natured. She may miss her father, but her father was misusing her. And then of course back to Antlers, where it boiled over and she killed him. It's a very heavy undertone. It's a very heavy theme, one that Ethel brings back with a more solidified importance in Preacher's Daughter. But as I listened to this entire project and I actually got to Antlers, it made a lot of sense why a lot of the quarrels that Ethel was having in this quote-unquote relationship were happening because it was a family member that was trying to hide all of this. However, that's just my interpretation of it. That doesn't have to be your interpretation of it. If it's different, perfectly fine. But like I said, with Ethel's use of this subject matter before, or I guess later in her official albums, and there continuing to be slight hints and tells throughout the 4-song EP that allude to this being the case, I think it's a pretty strong theory. However, that's it for Carpetbed, so let's move on. Golden Age. I believe this is kind of where Ethel's first really, not necessarily big, but notable song came out of. Knuckle Velvet is a very big song of hers. I'm not necessarily sure if it was that way when the EP released, if this got as much attention as it should have. Unfortunately, in 2019, I think the only thing I was listening to was the Phoenix Wright soundtrack, but I know now that this song is the most notable off of that project. Golden Age is a project that has just kind of one overarching theme and not necessarily a story like Carpetbed did. And I'll explain it a little more as we get further in, but the main point of Golden Age is a focus on this kind of hazy Golden Age dream-centered era of somebody's life where they're kind of like endlessly in love. And each song kind of catalogs a different attempt at getting at that golden age. So let's talk about the first song, Sunday Morning. The first verse already shows Ethel in a very bad situation. She's in a very abusive relationship that shows her constantly trying to appease her partner. And one super interesting thing that you'll probably pick up on if you haven't listened to this song and you're a big Ethel Cain fan, is that the start of each phrase, especially when she says Sunday morning, is exactly how she will sing Sunday Morning in the song American Teenager 3 years later. A lot of these projects, you will notice, are kind of like blueprints for a lot of Ethel's later work, whether that's production-wise with the technique that she uses a rough draft of on these projects and kind of hones her skills in later, or in a lyrical sense where she uses bits and pieces of these to kind of call back to later on. I also wrote down trap beat ? This is my first time listening to Golden Age all the way through, and what I didn't know was there are quite a few trap beats on this project, which is kind of funny. When I go home at night, I think about the ways that I can get out of the hold you've got me in. This endless search for appeal that Ethel has found herself in this relationship doesn't necessarily seem like something to blind herself from the negative parts of it. It more so seems like a defense tactic to keep her abuser at bay until he is either asleep or just not there, so that she can think about how to leave. With the chorus echoing that, being a reassurance that she will be okay and that life will still continue for her after she is left, that there is still hope and a purpose for her. A pretty self-contained story. There's not a ton to note here other than the fact that there is reassurance at the end that life will continue. I think with a lot of Ethel's stories, especially stories that revolve abusive relationships, they seem pretty hopeless in a sense that there's always another factor in the picture that is making it seem very bleak, that's making it seem that life isn't going to continue after, whether that be substances or something else like that. So in a sense, I know this relationship is still pretty terrible, but Ethel is going to leave it and get out of it, and it seems like it's setting up a bit of a happy ending. There's only like one other time that happens though, unfortunately. This album, again, is pretty bleak. Casings is the next song, and it starts with record static and a very nice piano melody. The first verse of this song sets up a very weird dynamic that Ethel has found herself in. It seems that she is either in kind of like a situationship or the end of a relationship with a person that she has become very dependent on, with her begging this person to tell her that she is his to get her to stop crying, but this person is only saying that just so she will stop crying so he can keep distancing himself. And Ethel thinks it's because of another girl. Can she give you what I can't? The things I cry for every night? The lyrics get a little more charged than that, but at its core, there's this very confused jealousy that Ethel is feeling, where she thought she was giving this person everything that he wanted and everything that she was able to give, and since this person doesn't want to be in a relationship with her either at all or anymore, it seems that Ethel has gone into the mindset that it's because another person is able to give more. And even though this is the case, it seems that Ethel still can't let go. She is crying every night because she wants him back and she needs this relationship again. It seems to be a very unfortunate end to a codependent relationship, especially one where Ethel might have thought things were going really well and that she was giving all that she could, almost like she had almost obtained this golden age that she had been fantasizing about. However, that was not the case, and it seems like another person was able to be more of what that person wanted, and she can't come to terms with that yet. I made another comment about the trap beats. Just thought they were really funny. Next we come to the track Lillies. We hear a much more melodic or dreamy melody in this one. What a wondrous thing to be in love. This is a line that I find really interesting because it gets used to a certain extent in the project Perverts. The track House of a Psychotic Woman has a line that says such a wondrous and painful thing to be loved, while the one in Pervert sets up the good and bad dichotomy of love a little bit better, this one echoes it in a sense as well. You're like an angel, nothing can touch you. This line is an almost direct quote from the book The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky is a very famous Russian author who wrote Crime and Punishment, but also a lot of other really great novels. And in the book The Brothers Karamazov, it talks a lot about God, free will, and morality, challenging those concepts. And I haven't read the entire book, but from what I was able to find, the exact line in the book was describing a character who was very moral, very ethical, just a good person who was going into a situation that was not that, going into a place that was pretty bad. And in this sense, Ethel is using it to describe the other person as the angel and herself as the chaos, the bad situation that is going to ruin this angel. Like I mentioned earlier, Ethel is not a stranger to painting pictures where her own personal or generational trauma is affecting her relationships, and this is another case of that, which is hammered home with the line, "You're such an angel and I'm going to hurt you." It's an echoing of the "I never meant to hurt you, but somehow I knew I would" mentality. And then the rest of the song just kind of echoes how good of a person her partner is. This is a really interesting painting of the pursuit of the golden age, because it seems like this one was almost cut off by Ethel herself. And while we don't get the full picture of exactly what happens at the end of the relationship, it's very obvious that that is not obtained. But let's go to Head in the Wall, where it's pretty much the complete opposite, unfortunately. The first verse details such intense relationship-centered trauma or violence that it is causing Ethel to use self-harm in order to distract herself from it. With Ethel talking about how she's essentially stuck in this spot. Being in these abusive, toxic, and violent relationships is a lot more common in more rural, smaller places, where it may be a tight-knit community, or there may just not be a community in general. It seems like these situations are much harder to get out of. We've been cursed since the start. Jesus didn't want us. You take all of your sins out on my body. In the same way that those relationship situations are a lot more common in those communities, it makes it just that more bleak when it's a tight-knit religious community, because it makes it seem like you're almost forsaken by the religion that your town or your community has preached so strongly, just hammering it home with Ethel saying that he takes her sins out on her. And then we get to the second half of the song, and it's a lot. I'm not laughing because any of it's funny or anything. I'm laughing just because it's crazy. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. It seems that her partner was so bored of doing drugs that he did other illegal things that were a lot worse. And in an interview that Ethel did, when talking about this part of the song, she talked about how common it was for people in those areas that committed those sort of things to have done it out of some sense of a mundaneness that occurred in their life because of the highs that they were achieving, and nothing else felt as good. Which, again, is just an insane thing to think about. Title is also a bit of a call to the song Head in the Ceiling Fan by Title Fight. Title Fight has always been a pretty big inspiration for Ethel, and that is just another example of it. Now we're at the song Knuckle Velvet. If you have never heard the whole Golden Age EP before, you've probably heard this song. This song is another failed attempt to get to the Golden Age, but it kind of plays on both concepts that we've seen here. One where Ethel's partner is a terrible, abusive person, but one where Ethel is a good person and trying to help this other person. I'm saying prayers through a throttled neck. It seems that this relationship maybe has gone on for a while, to where Ethel knows how this person was before any of the abuse started, and is either praying that they will change or praying that that kind of person will come back. But it seems like this person may be a little too far gone, where she is saying he's shedding his knuckle velvet. Again, back to the antler ideology. Velvet is a material that grows on top of antlers as they grow in to kind of protect them as they are growing, and animals will shed that velvet off to reveal the fully grown antler, which means that this person is so violent that they are quite literally shedding the skin or the velvet off of their knuckles, and maybe even revealing the hard interior or their bones in their knuckles, which is just evil. That's crazy. The latter half of this song shows this person almost like emotionally blackmailing Ethel, where whenever she leaves, he is breaking down, he's crying, he's acting like a child to get Ethel to come back. And Ethel in this song has such a good and kind soul that she sees him as genuine. She sees that his emotional outbursts where he says that he's going to change are real and that she can still help him, but it's just going to keep this cycle going. This, I suppose, is one of the more involved pursuits of the golden age in this entire project, where she is still seeing the good in this person, possibly through an earlier part of the relationship where he wasn't like this, seeing that she could maybe still get there. But again, it's a failed attempt. It's not happening. So it seems like throughout all of this, we can't really get to the golden age, can we? So what happens when the self-realization that the golden age may not actually be something that's obtainable, or maybe the realization that it's okay to not obtain the golden age? What happens when that thought occurs? Well, the title track, Golden Age, tells exactly that. Ethel talks more in depth about what the golden age really is on this track, painting it as her being old and retired and with the person that she loves. But again, also realizing that she can never get there, saying, I got what I wanted, but it's never enough for me. She can pretty consistently find relationships with people, but it's never enough to get to the golden age. This line made me think for a little bit that this was a concept EP and that all of these stories were connected, but a lot of these relationships just seem too crazy and too terrible to really all be connected to each other. It's very difficult to see one person being able to go through all of that, especially in Head in the Wall. Like that, there's no way. I don't want to be in my house anymore. Even the thought of being in her home is ruined for her. Do you just want my blood? Am I that damn hard to love? Being in an abusive relationship is absolutely terrible from every angle you look at it, but it's also a very frustrating experience for the victim as well, because it's very demoralizing to think that it is easier to be physically abusive than to actually love a person. But the bridge shows Ethel realizing that her golden age doesn't have to be this perfect relationship that she's envisioning. Her golden age can be right now. Her golden age can be something that she is experiencing in this moment. That is her life right now. She doesn't have to be in love to be happy. She can be her own person. I'll paint these ages 100 shades of gold. Guys, I think we have found a bit of an anomaly in an Ethel Cain project. A happy ending. Most Ethel Cain projects either have a really sad ending or a really dead ending. And so at least this one seems pretty nice. Like I said, these songs still seem pretty self-contained. I don't think they're all connected, but I do think it was more of an overarching theme of the golden age being something that each song was constantly looking for but could never achieve. And now we move on to the final project, Inbr. Inbr is the most popular of all of these EPs and is really where Ethel honed the narrative ability to be able to tell stories where generational trauma affects families all the way down the line, where decisions that the children didn't commit or control are affecting them to this day. And the opening two tracks of this EP kind of paint this in a bit of a broad picture, and it starts with Michelle Pfieffer. Michelle Pfieffer is an actress who played notable characters like Catwoman in Batman. However, this song is not actually about Michelle. It's more of a picture painted or an idealization of the perfect life, as Ethel put it. This song paints a very obsessive relationship between Ethel and her partner, who I will refer to as Aaron in this song because of Lil Aaron. The first verse and the chorus paint just how obsessed Ethel is with this person. She is wide awake every night thinking about him. She is constantly telling her friends about everything he's doing. But the chorus also shows that their own problems, more specifically Ethel's own problems, would kill the relationship or even them, and that this is something that they can't pursue. Aaron will also hammer home that fact in his verse, where he talks about telling his mom about Ethel and her laughing. Also, quick side note, I guess a lot of people don't like Lil Aaron's verse on this song. I think it's fine. I like it. I think he does it justice. Shout out Lil Aaron. I think. I don't actually know what he does now or what music he's made or if he is a great person. But this verse was good. The bridge also hammers home that generational trauma theming, with Ethel talking about how they're tangling with Jesus Christ. Sort of seeming like the reason that this all isn't going to work is because of, one, something out of their control, something much bigger than that. I don't want to beat a dead horse and explain to you what the Cain name means in a spiritual sense for the 1000th time. But essentially, Cain murdered his brother Abel in the Bible, and because of this, God punished him to walk the earth for eternity and cursed his entire family. The poster boy for generational trauma. Ethel's played into this spiritual curse a lot more in her actual thought out concept albums, but in this sense it's much more of an implied thing. Michelle Pfieffer is also a fantastic song. I really like it. I think it's very underrated. But we're gonna keep going. Let's talk about Crush. Crush is by far the most popular song from the project. If you think you've never heard the project but you've listened to Crush, that's where this originates from. And it's again just another broad painting of these generational trauma themes. But this time it's not Ethel's fault. His window's already passed, so he's shooting out the glass. We're painting the picture of a man or love interest that Ethel has her eyes on who has missed his window of opportunity to escape their poverty-stricken town. And because of this, he's just kind of getting into whatever trouble that will keep him occupied. It's her crush. That's why the song is called this. And he's not a very stand-up guy either. He keeps guns in his locker. He's a father who's on death row. He has friends that move dope. And a brother who is extremely successful in spite of all that his mother will constantly compare himself to, with the father being in death row painting that generational trauma picture. However, throughout all of this, Ethel finds it a little bit fun that he is like this, saying that good men die too, so I'd rather be with you. Ethel kind of sees this as a sort of everybody dies situation, so why not have fun? You know, you only live once, which is a crazy reasoning for this sort of thing. But again, when you're living in an area that is this poverty stricken, you kind of have to do whatever it takes to keep yourself stimulated. The rest of the song talks about Ethel not wanting to make the first move, so she riles him up, she teases him, she fantasizes about him, and she eventually convinces herself that he feels the same way. When interviewing for this song, Ethel described the inspiration for it as real-life experiences that she had in her hometown in Florida, where she was 16 in circumstances with 23-year-olds, which makes the reasoning of why she thought this kind of bad boy or this kind of troublemaker aesthetic seemed so cool because he was so much older, but also again just paints how messed up this guy was. Crush is also a great song though. There's a reason you've probably heard this one without actually listening to the EP. So let's move on to God's Country. Get me to God's Country. God's Country is really interesting in the sense that it's very vague with the kind of trauma or the kind of underlying generational things that are keeping these two apart, but it's more of a submission to the fact that these things have consequences. A highway to nowhere, but we wrote it. There's a lot of lines in the beginning of this song that paint the picture of a relationship that was never going to go anywhere, but they still got in it anyways. The two people in this song realizing that their shared experiences would probably make it so that this relationship would never foster anything or go anywhere, but they still decided to go into it anyways. With the feature artist Wicca Phase Springs Eternal, who I'm going to refer to as Springs, saying, and the family secrets hiding in the farmhouse down the street. And this is what I mean when I say it's vague. What does that mean? What's in that farmhouse? Do we find out? No. But the rest of the verse recounts things that they have both done. Recounts Ethel crashing her father's car when she was 17, and Springs sleeping with a virgin wife, meaning that he was with someone who was already married to someone else, I think. Which, if you want to connect it to this relationship, that means that potentially Ethel was married to someone else, but was seeing Springs, or something of that nature. It doesn't say what's in the farmhouse, so I really don't know. But that's, I think, what the theming is of this one. Springs goes to a place where he can see God's power and he starts to beg and pray. And it seems even clear that the two have indulged in this relationship knowing that they have done things with consequences and knowing that these consequences would come, but like I said, did it anyways. There before the grace of God go I. The origin of this line seems to come from a quote from an old English preacher named John Bradford, where John saw a prisoner getting led off to execution and said the phrase, "There but for the grace of God go I." Sort of seeing himself in the prisoner a little bit, seeing them both as sinners. Just, I guess, sort of a way to say that God will have mercy. Where Ethel's version more so sees herself in the place of the prisoner, seeing that God will have mercy on her. Like I said, this is a little more of a submission to the spiritual or higher power that I guess is dishing out the consequences for their acts or the acts of their ancestors, instead of focusing on the things that may have got them there or the effects of those relationships. Again, it's very vague, and narrative-wise, that's about as good as a theory as I could construct, so we're gonna move on. Unpunishable. If you listen to this song, you'll notice it sounds really similar to another Ethel Cain song that will get released a little bit later, Gibson Girl. As I said earlier, a lot of these songs serve as the blueprint for other Ethel Cain songs that she made later, both sonically and narratively. Sacrificial Angel, Dirty Slut with Needs. This is a version of Sigmund Freud's Madonna whore complex, where he theorizes that women unfortunately get contrasted into two very polarizing opposites: a very saint-like, motherly, asexual beacon of hope, or a very desire-centered, self-centered, not nice word. As we get closer to the end of the song, you'll see it gets painted in a really interesting way. Sucking on his teeth, he needs it so bad. The darker the fruit, the sweeter. We are talking about heroin. Heroin is a kind of drug where the darker it is, usually the effects are stronger, and it seems like Ethel is the one administering it in this scenario, painting a picture of control. She is in control of this person that she's with, in this club that she's in, where it seems like they are both off of this substance. However, it seems like she doesn't want to be in control. She does a lot of things in this song to try and push the role of dominance onto the person that she's with. However, it just doesn't work. She's unpunishable. And it's unpunishable because every time she's on this substance, she feels this overwhelming sense of control. However, when she's not, when the effects of this substance wear off, she has no idea what's going on. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know who this man is. She's not in control at all. She's in the middle of an ocean that is casting her all over the place. This is what the Madonna whore complex is painting. This is what the sacrificial angel, dirty slut with needs, is talking about. When Ethel is on drugs, she is very in control. She's very charged. She's very vulgar and explicit. But when she's not, she's a helpless sacrificial angel. She has no idea what's going on. Just how like the song is a blueprint for Gibson Girl sonically, it's a blueprint narratively as well. This is a very similar narrative to what will be portrayed in that song, where while Ethel is on drugs in that song, she's also very in control, very vulgar and explicit. But this song as well doesn't have the most explicit form of a generational trauma theming. Addiction is something that can run in a family. It can start from very high up in the ancestry tree. So that is probably the closest connection you'll be able to get as far as that goes. Let's go to the next song, the title track. This one is a doozy and is probably the darkest and hardest to listen to in this EP, but subsequently also sounds amazing. It has the most explicit form of generational trauma theming in the entire song, and it shows that right off the bat by showing just how poverty-stricken Ethel is in her situation. She's barely living in a house, she barely has clothes, she barely has any warmth, and she barely has any care. Her mother seems to be either too sick or just not in the picture entirely to care for her, so all she has is her brother. Her brother is her protector, her provider, her caregiver, and is painted in the public eye as a very stone-cold, stricken, aggressive, troublemaking person, when in reality Ethel sees him as a beacon of hope or a beacon of light in this very terrible life that they're in. I'm bad, he's worse, we're already dead. The sins of their family has made it seem like they are beyond saving. The chorus is where things start to change a little bit. This song is the only song, I believe, in the Genius annotations where Ethel herself has annotated essentially the entire song. And there's a huge shift in the narrative when going from verse to chorus, because in the verse we're talking about her brother, and immediately whenever the chorus starts, we start talking about a person that's abusing Ethel. Some of these lines in the chorus still to this day are just like skin-crawlingly depraving to listen to, but it shows just how passive Ethel has become to the abuse in her life because of her circumstances. Who will take the fall? Who of us is stronger? She is challenging her abuser to come clean with what he's doing to her, but he never will. He doesn't even say a single word. Verse 2 continues to paint Ethel's brother as a caretaker or as a provider or protector, but it's more focused on Ethel telling her abuser that, telling him that if he wakes up, he's gonna kill him, because that's who her brother is, with the chorus then being repeated. However, listening to the song and reading the title, you probably thought it was about a very different scenario, where in fact the person that was causing all of this harm was Ethel's brother. And initially that's what I thought too, until I read the annotations and saw this very stark contrast, seeing where Ethel would talk about her brother and where Ethel would talk about the person that was doing all of this. It's very vague. It doesn't really tell us anything other than the fact that it's happening, and it doesn't disprove what we're thinking, which I think is correct. I think it is Ethel's brother that is doing all of this. However, I think Ethel's annotations are in character, and what I mean by that is I think she doesn't know. The line, if he wakes up, he'll show you what I'm talking about, and just all of Ethel's description of her brother, or like threats of him to this person, seem so fantastical to a point of like, why hasn't he done anything? Why hasn't this been taken care of yet? And I think it's because the person is her brother. He's not doing anything because it is him. He's not waking up to the sound of any of this because it's him. And that's crazy. Another very unfortunate consequence of this very seemingly socially outcasted family that is living in this terrible circumstance, that there really can be nothing done about it. There are very few songs that make my skin crawl when I listen to them, that are like worded so strongly that it just like makes my stomach churn. That is one of them. That one's still like, ugh. I could feel it. But we are going to move on to the last song of this EP, and the last song we'll be discussing today, Two-Headed Mother. And after that behemoth of a song we just talked about, this one is much more calm. It doesn't have a lot more going on. It's very simple in nature. The Two-Headed Mother talks about Ethel's mother, who is very split personality. Similar to the god-animal concept we talked about in Carpet Bed, it seems that Ethel's mother has two very intense sides. One where she loves intensely, but also one where that love is followed by intense aggression. And because of this, it's painted a skewed view of love in Ethel's mind, where she seems to think that all love is followed by aggression, which has made her rain hell on every man that she has been with. She hurts these men that she's with and takes control of them because of how her mother treated her, making this part of her personality welded into her. It's pretty brutal, but narratively it's pretty simple. It's another use of the generational trauma narrative, but one that seems to be a never-ending cycle. It doesn't seem like that is something that will change anytime soon. It seems like it is hard-coded into Ethel's brain or her personality. And that, my friends, is it. We covered 3 EPs. We covered, I think, 16 songs in total, and we covered a lot of hard themes, a lot of really crazy narratives that I hope maybe had something in them that you've never heard before. Maybe you've listened to these songs before and you never realized that some of the narratives or themes that I mentioned or theories that I crafted were a part of these, and you can listen to them again with a newfound sense of appreciation. Or maybe you just came away with anything. That would be really cool. I try to make theories and videos that aren't just like a regurgitation of what's already online, and hopefully I don't bring any bugs home or get bit by anything trying to leave here. I think that would be really, really awesome. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who waited for this video. I know I teased it back in like the end of May or the beginning of June, and I didn't get to it. I'm so sorry. And then the videos that I posted did so extremely well. I'm so extremely thankful that I ended up continuing to do videos like that for a little bit to try and grow my channel a little more. But now that we're here and I've used a lot of the ideas that I've been thinking of, I really wanted to give this the time and attention it deserves, so I can share appreciation to a lot of the fans that were here when this channel started, and we're here to build up a lot of it. So again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for waiting for this video, and I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you're not subscribed, that's the best way to support this channel. It's free and you can change your mind later, and I really would appreciate it. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.